What if I told you that disappearing is one of the most powerful moves you can make in a woman's mind? That the very moment you stop chasing, stop explaining, stop trying to convince her of your worth, and instead, you simply let go, you don't become forgotten, you become unforgettable. You see, silence, real intentional silence echoes. It lingers. It carves space in someone's thoughts where noise used to live. And it may sound strange at first, but the human mind is magnetically drawn to what's missing, to the unanswered, the unexplained, the mystery. When you disappear, not out of spite, but out of peace, you're not creating distance, you're creating depth. You're not chasing attention, you're commanding presence. And in that quiet, in that calm detachment, she begins to feel something she never felt before. Your absence carrying more weight than your words ever did. Most men exhaust themselves trying to prove they're enough. They send texts, they over-explain, they compromise their own energy just to be seen. But a man becomes truly powerful the moment he stops seeking validation and remembers that he already is enough. Not because she said so, but because he finally said so to himself. This isn't about games. It's not about manipulation. It's about awareness. It's about choosing yourself. Not with arrogance, but with clarity, with purpose. When a man walks away with peace in his chest and stillness in his eyes, he doesn't lose her. He gives her a chance to truly see him without distraction, without noise. And day by day, something begins to shift inside her. The silence becomes a mirror, the absence becomes a question, and the man who once felt like he was fading suddenly becomes the center of her mental universe. In this video, we're going to break down what happens in her mind day by day. When you disappear with dignity, when you stop chasing and start embodying. If you're someone who values inner strength over drama, purpose over ego, and wisdom over noise, then you're exactly where you're meant to be. Subscribe to Stoic Station. Join a community of men who choose stillness over struggle, clarity over chaos, and power that doesn't need to shout to be felt. Now let's begin. Day 1. She doesn't flinch. But that's not the end of the story. On the first day, your absence doesn't shake her. Not in any visible way. She's calm, composed, almost indifferent. She notices the shift, but only like someone notices a song fading in the background. It's there, but it doesn't interrupt the rhythm of her day. You see, women are accustomed to being wanted. They've been conditioned to expect that attention will eventually return, sometimes through persistence, sometimes through desperation. So when you go silent, she tells herself, it's just another cycle. Maybe you're busy. Maybe you're trying to stir up curiosity. Maybe you're one of the many who play hard to get, but eventually return to the same place at her feet. She doesn't panic. She doesn't wonder where you've gone. Not yet, because she still believes she knows the ending. She's seen it before, but what she doesn't realize is that this silence is not a performance. You're not withholding affection to create tension. You're not hoping to be missed. You've simply stopped offering your energy where it wasn't fully received. This is not about power. It's about peace. A peace that comes when a man no longer seeks validation, but lives by his own emotional code. And that's what makes this different. This isn't the beginning of a game. It's the end of one. She doesn't flinch because she doesn't feel the shift yet. But the real shift, it's happening inside of you. And soon, the silence she dismissed will become the very echo she can't ignore. Day 2 to 3, a subtle shift begins. By the second or third day, something begins to feel different. Not loud, not alarming, just off. There's a quiet void where your presence used to be. You had been consistent, steady, relying, overly available, but there, grounded. And now you're not. There's no message, no update, no reaction, just space and silence. She doesn't panic, not outwardly. She tells herself it's nothing, that you're probably busy, or simply taking a step back. She even convinces herself that it's refreshing, having space, having the upper hand. But underneath that composed surface, her mind is already beginning to reach. She finds herself scrolling through your conversation, maybe just to feel like there's still something tethering you to her. She glances at your profile not to engage, but just to confirm you're still around. But you're not. Not in the way she expects. Not in the way she's used to. That's when the quiet begins to grow roots. A small, almost imperceptible, seed of uncertainty takes hold. Not longing. No, that comes later. This is more subtle. It's the sense that something has shifted, and she can't quite name it. She doesn't know what she did, or if you're even thinking about her, and that ambiguity unsettles her in a way direct rejection never could. You're no longer following the script, and the unknown is always more powerful than the expected. In those early days, when you do nothing, you begin to say everything. And though she may not admit it yet, a question has already begun to echo in the back of her mind. What if he's really gone? Day 4 to 5. The absence feels heavier by the 4th or 5th day. Your absence is no longer something she brushes off. It's something she starts to feel, not in dramatic moments, but in the quiet, in the ordinary rhythms of her life. She finds herself unlocking her phone more often, not with urgency, but with the quiet hope that your name might appear. She tells herself it's nothing, just habit, just curiosity. But the truth is, your silence is starting to take up space. There are songs she skips now, not because she doesn't like them, but because they pull too much. They remind her of the comfort she felt when your presence was steady, when she didn't have to wonder where you stood. The nights feel a bit longer now. The absence settles in during the in-between moments, those pauses in conversation with friends, those minutes before sleep when no one texts her goodnight and she's left with only her thoughts. She assumed you'd break that by now. Like most men, you'd send something, anything, to remind her that she still holds the power. But you haven't. You're still silent. Still. And that unnerves her more than anger ever could. Your silence isn't a tactic. It's not noise disguised as strategy. It's deliberate, composed, alive with meaning in it. She begins to hear something louder than words. The sound of a man who no longer needs to chase. A man anchored in himself. And though she won't admit it, not even to herself, the weight of that realization has already begun to shift something inside her. Because now, she's no longer sure how this story ends. Day 6 to 7, the questions begin to echo. By the 6th or 7th day, something inside her begins to shift in ways she didn't anticipate. This isn't about missing you. Not in the romantic, sentimental way she might admit over a glass of wine weeks later. This is different. It's deeper. It's about control. Control. She believed she had. Control that once gave her confidence. And now, it's slipping. You were never meant to stay silent this long. Not according to the pattern. She knew you were supposed to flinch, to fold, to send a message. Something small maybe, but something. Instead, you've remained quiet, centered, unmoved. And that steadiness is beginning to unravel. Assumptions she didn't even realize she held. Questions start to surface in her mind, uninvited and unresolved. Did I misread him? Was he never that into me? Or worse, is he already with someone else? These aren't questions she voices aloud. They stay locked in her silence, tangled in the private spaces of her thoughts. But they echo again and again, and each time they return, they get louder. It's not just your absence that haunts her, it's the unfamiliar calm that surrounds it. You're not angry, you're not bitter, you're not playing games. You simply removed yourself without fanfare, without explanation. That's what unsettles her most. You're not trying to get a reaction. You're simply living your life, full, focused, and without the need to prove anything. And that reality pierces through her pride. Because for the first time, she's not just wondering where you've gone. She's questioning her own sense of importance in your world. Not because you diminished her, but because you've shown her something rare. A man who doesn't need her attention to feel whole. That kind of peace can't be faked, and it can't be ignored. Day 8 to 10, the quiet starts to haunt her. By now, the silence has transformed from a distant absence into something that lingers in the room with her. It follows her in moments she used to feel most secure, in the middle of conversations, during her scrolls through social media, in the hours just before she sleeps. It's no longer just something she notices. It's something she feels. She starts looking for signs that she still exists in your world. Did you view her story? Did you like an old photo? Were you tagged somewhere close enough for her to believe she might still cross your mind? But the answer, time and again, is no. Nothing. You've disappeared, not with a storm, but with stillness. And that stillness is louder than any confrontation could have been. She tries to stay composed, even amused by your disappearance. She tells herself you're playing a game, waiting for her to react. But the longer it goes, the harder it becomes to ignore the growing truth. This isn't a game. You're not baiting her. You're not holding your breath, hoping she notices. You've simply chosen silence, not as a weapon, but as a boundary, a declaration. And that's what unsettles her most. For the first time, she feels something she didn't expect. Regret. Not because you said something to trigger it, not because you begged for a second chance, but because you didn't. Because you walked away with the kind of quiet dignity she's not used to witnessing. The realization sinks in slowly. This is what it feels like when a man stops chasing to punish, but because he finally remembered. But his worth. And in that remembering, he became unreachable. Not by distance, but by peace. And that kind of peace doesn't just haunt her. It lingers in every silence she used to find comforting. Days 11 to 14, ego cracks. Doubt creeps in around. This time, something changes in her reflection. It's subtle at first. Just a longer pause in front of the mirror, a flicker of something behind her eyes. But as the days stretch on, the thoughts begin circling back. Not in frustration or anger, but in quiet questioning. She starts replaying your conversations in her mind. Words she brushed off now echo differently. Moments where she laughed or distanced herself now feel colder. In hindsight, she wonders if she missed something, or worse, if she dismissed something that actually mattered. The irony is, she still believes she has the power. She thinks she's choosing not to reach out. But deep inside, that control is beginning to erode. Because for the first time, she's not sure she was right. She's not sure how much of your silence is strategy, and how much of it is sincerity. And here's the part that strikes the deepest core. You're not doing any of this to provoke her. You're not orchestrating some grand emotional reversal. You're not sitting by the phone, hoping she notices. You're not trying to be missed. You're simply living, focused, grounded, at peace. You've placed your energy into things that nourish you. Your work, your body, your purpose. You've stepped off the emotional battlefield and walked towards something far more powerful, self-respect. And whether she wants to admit it or not, she senses the shift. Because nothing unnerves the ego like watching someone thrive without needing to prove anything. She's no longer asking if you're coming back. She's starting to wonder if you ever truly needed her to begin with. And in that uncertainty, the story she believed she was writing begins to lose its shape. Days 15 to 17. Her pride battles her curiosity. By now, the silence has carved out a space too large to ignore. It lingers in the spaces where your voice once fit so naturally, in the little updates, the passing comments, the subtle affirmations of presence. And though she's tried to convince herself that it doesn't matter, something in her is shifting. Her pride tells her to stay composed, to maintain the illusion of indifference. But curiosity has begun to pull at her, softly at first. Then, with a quiet desperation, she wants to reach out. Not with confession, but with something small. Something she can pretend is casual. A vague post, a lyric that could mean anything. A memory shared without context. Maybe a story where her smile looks almost real, except for the way her eyes betray the ache. She hopes it'll be enough to stir a reaction, to remind you that she still exists somewhere, in your thoughts. You remain still. You offer nothing. No likes, no messages, no signs of acknowledgement. And that absence, it cuts deeper than any harsh word could. Because it isn't angry, it isn't emotional. It's deliberate, clean, surgical. It forces her to confront something she's long avoided. She's not in control anymore. And the hardest truth to swallow is that she never really was. She just mistook your kindness for need, your presence for pursuit. But now, in your stillness, she sees you clearly, perhaps for the first time. And that realization doesn't just sting, it humbles her. Days 18 to 20. The fear becomes real. At this stage, the silence no longer feels like space. It feels like loss. It creeps into the corners of her day and settles in the quietest hours of the night. She's no longer just wondering where you went. She's beginning to fear that you're not coming back. And for the first time, that fear doesn't feel hypothetical. It feels real, heavy, immediate. She starts bringing you up in conversations, subtly at first, just enough to feel like it's in passing, but her voice gives her away. There's a pause, a tension in her words that didn't exist before. And when she's alone, the denial slips. She scrolls through your profile in the middle of the night, searching for anything, any trace that you still feel, what she no longer hears. She lingers too long on a photo of you smiling. It used to make her feel chosen. Now, it makes her wonder if she ever truly saw you at all, or just the version she wanted to believe in. There's a quiet unraveling happening beneath the surface. The narrative she once told herself, that you were lucky to have her, that you'd come running back, that she held the power, begin to collapse. And in their place, a sobering truth emerges. You were never trying to win. You weren't chasing. You were offering something few men truly do. Genuine presence, steady energy, and respect. And when it wasn't met with the same care, you didn't react. You simply withdrew. No drama, no explanations, just clarity. And now, she sees it not as a punishment, but as a boundary. Not as a tactic, but as a standard. She used to believe she was the prize. But now, she realizes what you were offering may have been the real rarity all along. Days 21 to 25. The strategizing begins. By now, the silence has unraveled the stories she once told herself. The illusion of control is gone, and in its place is a growing urgency. Not desperation, not yet, but something more calculated. She begins to shift. The edges of her once effortless confidence soften. Her tone changes. Her presence becomes more careful, more curated. She doesn't just want to be seen again. She wants you to see her the way you once did. Before the silence spoke louder than words. She might send a message that pretends to be accidental, just ambiguous enough to be excused if ignored. She might show up where she knows you, spend your time laughing a little louder, standing a little closer to the version of herself she thinks will draw your gaze. She might even reach out with something meaningless, a question she could Google, a memory she knows you remember, just to open a door. But here's the shift. You no longer walk through doors left half open. You don't mistake proximity for connection. You don't equate familiarity with meaning. And that's why you don't leap at the chance to respond. Not with bitterness, not with anger, but with stillness, with composure, with the clarity that no longer bends to old habits. You're not playing hard to get. You've simply outgrown the game. Your calm presence, your unwavering center, it's unsettling to her. Not because it's cruel, but because it's rare. She expected either resistance or surrender. What she didn't expect was indifference, rooted in peace. And that, more than anything, shakes her. Because she can feel it now in a way she couldn't before. You're not waiting. You're not reacting. You've moved on within yourself. And nothing is more disarming than a man who no longer needs to be understood to remain whole. Day 26 to 30. She's no longer curious. She's invested at this point. The silence has done more than just create space. It has created contrast. The absence of your attention, your presence, your energy, it's no longer just a mystery she's trying to solve. It's become something she feels deeply, something that lingers in her thoughts and touches the parts of her she didn't expect to be stirred. She's no longer curious about where you've gone. She's fully invested in understanding why it feels so different without you. Gone is the vague post, the accidental message, the passive tests. In their place comes something real, intentional. She reaches out, this time without the mask, without the performance. There's vulnerability in her voice, perhaps a softness in her words that wasn't there before. Not because she's trying to win you back with charm, but because, for the first time, she's speaking without assumption. She's not expecting you to be there waiting. She's hoping. And now, the dynamic quietly shifts. This is no longer about whether you'll respond. It's about whether she still qualifies for a seat at your table, whether she has earned the right to be let back into a space you no longer offer so easily. Because your absence wasn't just silence. It was a mirror. It reflected to her what she once took for granted, what she assumed would always be there. And now that it's gone, she understands it wasn't casual. It was sacred. You on your end are different too. Not hardened, not bitter, just clear. Clear on what your energy costs. Clear on what your peace is worth. Clear that your value doesn't bend to her validation. It never did, but now you see it. Her message, however sincere, does not undo the process. It does not erase the journey you took within yourself in these days of stillness. And so you pause, not to punish, but to protect. Because what was once given freely now must be met with the same reverence you've cultivated in your own life. She no longer wants a reaction. She's asking for reconnection. But the difference now is you're the one who gets to decide. And that decision is no longer about desire. It's about alignment. Because you've learned that your worth was never something she could grant or take away. It was always yours. And now you carry it like a man who finally remembers what it means to be whole. Summary, final thought. Disappearing is so often misunderstood. It's not a strategy, and it's certainly not a game. It's not about punishment or power. When done from a place of calm, clarity, it becomes something far more profound. It becomes a mirror, and in that mirror, she doesn't just see the space where you once stood. She sees herself, her patterns, her pride, the expectations she carried without ever questioning if they were earned, the attention she thought was guaranteed, the control she assumed she had. But the true gift of silence is not in what it shows her, it's in what it reveals to you. When you step back from the noise, from the need to prove, from the old habits of overextending yourself just to be seen or chosen, you meet yourself again. You remember who you were before you placed your worth in someone else's hands. You see your strength, not in your ability to chase or fix, but in your ability to remain still present and self-led. And once you reach that place, once a man stands in the fullness of who he is without apology, he no longer seeks permission to be valued. He no longer performs for acceptance. He no longer begs to be remembered. Because the man who remembers who he is understands that if someone forgets him, they were never truly seeing him to begin with. Have you ever stepped back from a woman? Truly stepped back, without anger or games, only to watch her suddenly change? Or maybe you've made the mistake of reaching out too soon, hoping to reconnect, only to feel that sinking regret afterward. If you've been there, you're not alone. Most men have lived through these moments, some in silence, some with lessons carved deep into memory. I want to hear your story. What happened when you stopped showing up the way she expected? What did you feel when you held the line or when you broke it? Drop a comment below, for validation, but for connection, for truth. This isn't just a video. It's a space for real conversations. And I promise I read everyone. I'll reply to as many as I can, because no matter where you are in your journey, your experience matters. And someone else out there needs to hear it.